and welcome back to Creative Discovery in PaintShop Pro. I'm Sandy and this is tip number 1 in a new segment I'm calling Tuesday's Tips. The first tip I'm going to give you is how to get back your old materials properties box that used to come with the older versions of PaintShop Pro. Many of you really prefer this box. It has got its definite advantages, which I will show you when we open up the program and have a little look at it. Okay, let's get going. A new Materials Properties window was introduced a few years back with PaintShop Pro 17. This is the version we have now in 2022 also, with the large circle to choose colours from. So this is your Materials Properties box, and you get this by clicking on one of the foreground or background colour boxes. We'll have a little look at version 16, which was just before this came out, and then you can see the difference. So this is a PaintShop Pro 16, so you can see the difference between this materials palette and the 2022. This has a box around it. The Materials Properties box is actually quite different. Let's go to 2022. Okay, let's say we want to choose a gradient in the current version. Click on the gradient and then we have 6 samples here. Now that is all that can fit into your viewing. Unless you scroll and you want to go from the top, and if you're like me and you've got so many gradients, you are going to be scrolling forever and a day, and then you think you saw one at the beginning and then you have to go back and you can't find it. You do have the option of going view small thumbnails, but you are still restricted to the size of this as to how many can go in there. You can't view any more at once than that. So there's a lot of scrolling involved. Now the difference between this one, if we're looking at a gradient, I'm going to shift the materials property box over here because it will demonstrate this even better. This is the large thumbnails. This is the small thumbnails. So immediately you've got a lot more. But the other option is you can grab this and you can drag it out. You can pull it down. So you have a lot more options to quickly glance at. This might be very preferable to you even if you're working with the 2022 version. Everything else is pretty much the same. You still have your resource manager. You still have your file locations up here. Once you've clicked on a gradient, it will be in there. You can still set your angle, your repeats. You still have your 4 styles of gradient. So your gradient editor is right here where the gradients are when you open the Materials Properties box in 2022 and later versions. In the earlier versions, you need to go to the gradient and click on Edit. And then your gradient editor comes up with all of these things that are exactly the same. You can still do patterns, and again you've got the same option of pulling it out, going into smaller or bigger thumbnails and stretching your box out. You've still got your angle and your scale here. Now if you want to do a texture, the texture box is over here. You will just click the texture and then you will have the options of all of your textures, which you can again extend this to scroll for a lot more, which makes it a lot easier to find something in a hurry. It still is the same with this texture box. You need to untick the texture box if you don't want your pattern to turn out quite faint with just a very faint texture on it. Okay, let's go back to 2022 and find out how you can actually get that materials property box if you wish to use it. Okay, let's close down 16 entirely. Close this materials properties box. Now, if you have 17 and 18 and onwards and you wish to use that material properties box, you need to go to File, Preferences, General Program Preferences, then click on Palettes. Here is options for the material palettes, the docking, and there's options for the layer palettes. We'll come to this one in a later tip. Now this says use classic material properties. Now you need to tick that because that is the classic material properties that we're after. and click OK, then you can see immediately my materials palette changed. And when I click on this to open up the properties box, we have that other version in here. So to make your gradients, you go in there to your edit box, and it's still as it was in the other one. You have the little arrow here to open all your gradients up. You can shift the materials property around. You do have a lot more to view before you have to scroll, and this is the large version. I haven't expanded it. If I want to expand it, now remember, you only had an option of looking at 6 gradients, patterns, textures, whatever. You only have an option of looking at 6 in the new material properties. So this is why a lot of people actually like this one better, because it gives you a lot more to view at a glance and a lot less scrolling. Shut that down. Now if you try this and you don't like it, you just go back to General Program Preferences and untick that. Click OK, and you will have your old one back again, or actually the new one. So you have all the same things in there, they are just in a different place, and you do need to learn how to use the material properties box that you choose. Okay, so that's very easy to restore and go back to how many of you prefer it. Many of you prefer those older palettes, but would still like to have all of the extra things that come in these later versions. So you can have the best of both worlds if that's the way you would prefer it. I am still going to be using PaintShop Pro 2022 as it is, and not those earlier versions. So if you found this helpful, please give it a thumbs up. You can also subscribe to my channel by clicking on the button in the bottom right hand corner. The little bell up the top will help you receive notifications for all of upcoming lessons, tutorials, projects, tips and tricks. So until I see you in the next lesson, have fun and bye for now.